Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Mind Your Puckin' Business with your host, Jeffrey Krentzman.
Thank you, Dougie Sticks.
My pleasure.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am all right. I think when you say that, I was just thinking, like, I'm not really the host. I'm a co-host. I mean,
thank you.
You're not just here for bells for fun. You know, you're part of it. Well, thank you everybody for joining the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast this week. Coming to you as always from the beautiful studios of Undefeated Media in a super duper snowy Bergen County, New Jersey. Yes. A 26-inch snowy Bergen County, New Jersey. If you looked outside this morning versus what you saw 72 hours ago when you could see blacktop and grass and all that stuff, that is now a thing of the past. And who knows when you're going to see green grass again around here? Because it was not a pretty sight here. Well, I guess it was pretty sight depending on your point of view, but it just was not really cool. The weather now.
Yesterday wasn't fun. Yesterday was a fun day for us here in Jersey with shoveling 2 feet of snow.
No. Or having people plow it out for you, or having your own snowblower, whatever method you do. We are definitely in winter. They said that we were having a below average winter, and one storm changes that completely. Yes. We are now above average for where we need to be. And there are rumors, unconfirmed, sources of the Mother Nature type are telling me that there is a chance for more snow on Sunday, on Super Bowl Sunday, nonetheless. Oh. But let's hope that does not happen.
That could be a good thing.
Why? Because we can't go anywhere?
Well, the next day. I mean, if you're a kid, you don't have to go to school the next day after the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So you can have all the nachos you want.
We should talk one day, speaking of school, the conversation you and I had off the air here before about kids going to school and what should happen this year with everything going on. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, whether you're listening to us on Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is. This is the Mind Your Puckin' Business podcast. This is on the Spanish dial. This is what, 24? Right, 23. 24. 24.
Sí.
24. Sí. I said with a B, just for you, buddy. You can email the show at any time, questions during the week, and that is always at mypbshow@gmail.com. That's mypbshow@gmail.com. And we should say right off the top, before we get into the ways we're going to do the show today, and I can see already we're going to get right into it in a minute, but just to re-announce what we talked about last week, our Super Bowl contest is really cool. We are basically giving away free money. You cannot lose. You can only win. Well, you can't lose. You can draw, I guess. You can be in the same position you're in. You can either win money or you don't win money, but you're not going to spend money. What you need to do with that email on the screen, mypbshow@gmail.com, send us who you think is going to win the Super Bowl between Step one, right? Dougie's going to really water it down for you and get it done. Step by step. You're going to tell us who's going to win the Super Bowl, either the Kansas City Chiefs or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You only have two choices, so you got a 50-50 shot. And then you're going to tell us the score. So Step two. What we're going to do at the end of the Super Bowl or Monday morning, because it's probably past my bedtime, Sunday night, is we will then look and see who had the right team winning. And then the second step for us is to see who had the closest in points. So if you said Kansas City was going to win 20-10 and Kansas City wins by 8, you have a pretty good chance of winning because you were only 2 off. Someone would have to beat you. So again, send your stuff to mypbshow@gmail.com. You can enter your husband, you can enter your wives, you could enter your
you get multiple
kids.
Entries.
You know what? If
really
they're a different person, it's fine. The more entries, the better. And the winner will receive a $50 Amazon gift card, courtesy of the big wigs at Undefeated Media. So we thank the people here. We are going to shift right into
Last thing, trivia question.
Yes.
What number Super Bowl is it?
Oh, 55?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what that is in Espanol?
No.
55.
No, would not have gotten that. Thank you for doing that. So since we are in Super Bowl week, there is no better way for us to start off the show with probably our most popular guest and most knowledgeable guest, or one of our most knowledgeable guests. That's not, insult the other people that come on the show. One of our most knowledgeable guests in his craft, and that is the great Geoff Sheasby of Old Man Who Bets. Welcome to the show, Geoff. How are you?
Gentlemen, great day for a great day. Thanks for having me back. What's going on?
How are you? Are you ready for the Super? Is this a big week for you, I would think?
Yeah, I mean, it's as big as a week as I think as we can get here, right? Last week without any football, I felt like it was already the dog days of summer, but I didn't have any baseball to bet on either. So it was kind of a double-edged sword of just mediocre and mediocre as I don't know, scrolled through Netflix and struggled.
You know, I sent a buddy of mine a text on Sunday at like 6:30, and I was like, man, Sundays really suck without football. This is the first one we've had to deal with this since August. And yeah, it's different, right? When you don't have it, man.
I mean, going back to life without sports is almost what it feels like. All of a sudden, I was like early pandemic, and I was like, what, am I going to watch The Masked Singer tonight? I don't think so. But
yeah, I don't know. So, well, at least we have one more week, and it is the best week of the year, or weekend of the year, I always say, and that is Super Bowl weekend. So a lot of different ways we could play this with you on the show, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time. So why don't you tell us overall, Kansas City, as of the moment, went back up, I saw this morning, to 3.5. That's really where I saw it open. It went down to 3. Now Kansas City's back up to 3.5 point favorite. What are just your overall thoughts on this game, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, one, how lucky are we, right? We're coming off of Brady versus Rodgers, GOAT versus GOAT, after Brady versus Breeze. You know, that whole Western Conference thing all of a sudden has just been, you know, highlight reel after highlight reel. Now we get Tom Brady versus, you know, probably the future GOAT, Patrick Mahomes. You know, I think because just, you know, zooming out, regardless of how you feel about Tom Brady, how you felt about his run on the Patriots, moving to the most stacked offense since 2007 that he's had. You know, pretty special moment. What do I feel about this game? I love Tom Brady in this game. You know, narrative-wise, before we dive into any data here, how are you going to bet against one of the most best cover quarterbacks of all time? Covers at what, 58%, something like that, at home in the Super Bowl while you got to fade the public? I mean, that is like the perfect storm of narrative, at least from my part. So I'm loving the Bucks at 3.5. I think is a treat. I've seen that line being obviously bouncing back and forth. It seems like whenever it moves to 3.5, the sharps are gobbling it up and pushing it back to 3. And, you know, I was listening to some odds makers. I think it was maybe from FanDuel on the morning after with Jared and Ariel, you know, great people over there. And they were saying that the home field advantage, the home underdog, that was already built into the line. You know, and I thought that was kind of something that he just kind of had to say. I think any line bigger or smaller would have been a really lopsided bet for the books. I think, you know, the public obviously loves Mahomes. This team can flip a switch, almost reminiscent to the Splash Bros, you know, the Warriors. When they need to turn it on, they can turn it on at any point. But this is a Bucs team that's got a great defense, has got a great offense, and I think, quite frankly, has more ways to win. So before we dive into any of the data here, I prefer the Bucs +3. Love them at 3.5, coming through that key number, and even debating sprinkling a little bit of a money line on them.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more on this. And you and I didn't rehearse this. I just want to say that. I had no idea what you were going to say. I am all about, if I can get Tom Brady in a Super Bowl getting points, and it's no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes or Kelsey or Andy Reid, and he's home, man, I'm taking Tom Brady. I mean, I'm shocked. But so let me ask you this. The over-under on the game is a high. It's at 56. Obviously, Vegas, and we all think there's going to be a lot of points. Why would we not with these two offenses, especially Kansas City? What do you think on the over-under? Is there a way you think it's too high? You think it's just about right?
Yeah, I don't love the total here. I think it's high enough that it warrants probably looking towards the over. You know, I always live by the mantra: if it's high, go higher; if it's low, go lower. At least on like the initial line read. And I think what's interesting here, of course, is, you know, it makes sense to go over, right? These offenses are great. You've got Kansas City at 6.4 yards per play. You've got Tampa Bay at 6.0, both very, very strong. Defenses not as strong, at least in terms of a yards per play point of view, 5.6 and 5.1. Notice there that those are very similar, and when the data is similar, we look to the underdog. There's actually a slight lean there for Tampa Bay, of course, on the defense. So it's two juggernaut offenses. You know, the Bucs defense is very good. The Chiefs defense is not, but I think the narrative is that the Chiefs offense is that good that it doesn't matter how good your defense is. You know, I think, again, we have seen that before. The 16-0 Patriots came in the playoffs with an unstoppable offense. Of course, this is not that team. They're not facing necessarily the Giants defense that year, but, you know, it does seem like a thing that I guess I lean towards the under ultimately, because that's a lot of points, and the public loves to inflate the lines in the biggest game of the year. So for sure, no action for me. I get the narrative: two awesome offenses that are going to be battling, but I do think this Tampa Bay defense will show up. And the Chiefs defense at 0.350 points per play is better than they are in terms of efficiency and in terms of yards per play. So they feel like they almost have that bend don't break kind of mantra going. So again, don't like the line. It's high enough that I think you could lean over, but I think it's probably inflated because of public perception. The public loves overs. This is the most public game or the most bet game in the world. So if anything, to be a sharp line. I prefer going on the totals and maybe even looking into some touchdown props.
So, yeah, I mean, there are literally, I can't even count how many props there are. I don't even know if I'll have time to go through them all during the week. So, I mean, there's just so many. So one of the more popular ones I always have found Super Bowl week is who's going to win the MVP. And, man, Patrick Mahomes at minus 106 is, it's almost telling you, well, if the Chiefs are going to win, that's who's going to win it. And Brady is second with a plus 210. Is there anybody else beyond it? Because then, in the third spot goes to Tyreek Hill at plus 1,200. So it jumps up a lot. If I were looking at the MVP and I didn't want to touch Mahomes or Brady because the payouts aren't great, is there anybody else that you could see, this guy's going to he's due for a good game. He could win the MVP with good odds.
Yeah, I can't take credit for this take, but Ladarius White and JPP I thought were both interesting. Again, both from the Sports Grid, Jared and Ariel were talking about those. But they went really deep on MVP props. I haven't, but both of those, I think last time I checked, are getting 3 digits to 1, maybe like 100 to 1 odds. And you think about a well-timed interception, maybe a pick 6, maybe 4 or 5 sacks. Ladarius White had like 1 million tackles last week. Defensive players have won this award before, going back to what I think it was Von Miller. So if it's not as much of a shooter as we think it is, we get a couple of key turnovers. I think there could be some fun looking into more specifically the Bucks defensive players than anything else. But, those are long shots, sprinkle a few shekels on them, maybe some beer money and hope for the best.
Speaking of key turnovers, do you think, Brady's confidence is going to be, obviously not, but do you think Brady's going to be a little shook from his 3 interceptions last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I think 2 of those were tips off of Mike Evans' hands. Just screaming at the television. But there were slight overthrows flying, but they weren't necessarily bad balls. I think they got some decent pressure on him, in the second half there last week. But I think Brady will, short-term memory. He's in the Super Bowl for the 8th time. I don't think he's losing sleep over those interceptions. If anything, it just made the game closer than it should have been, and they still covered. So all good on that front.
So I'm going to assume that you stay so far away from things like heads, tails. You don't bet on stuff like that, right? I'm assuming that's not really where you're looking to go on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you got a 50-50 shot, baby. So tails never fails. But I will not be putting meaningful money on that. And, I think if you want to get into like pregame props of things that are, wild, but not necessarily that bettable. Maybe you look towards the under on the Star Spangled Banner. There was a great article, I think it was on Sports Illustrated, that walks through essentially all the different sides there in under 2 minutes. It's a duet, first time since 2006, but you've got a country star and like a soulful singer, not live, no fans. And the take essentially was that they're going to be kind of riffing off of each other in a very premeditated script, so there's less room for them to just kind of belt notes out. Eric Church also doesn't have the vocal powers to be belting those notes. Usually on his Star Spangled renditions, he had like a live band to kind of spruce it up a little bit. So I think the under on the Star Spangled Banner should be interesting, with the average Super Bowl time, I think, being around 1:55. So again, not going too crazy on that one, but I thought that was a pretty interesting spin from the Sports Illustrated article I was reading.
That is cool. So I'm going to bring in we have a live question coming in from someone watching, and I'm going to read it to you as I'm seeing it. Is, do y'all think that Leonard Fournette could have a big game? I'll leave that to you, Geoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I think in terms of, I didn't look too closely on yardage props here, but in terms of anytime touchdown scores, I think Tampa Bay running backs in general, great spot to be at. You got Fournette at plus 120, I believe it is. You've got Rojo anywhere between 225 and 260. So let's just start, right off the bat. You got Kansas City, they're 31st in terms of overall rushing DVOA. DVOA is an efficiency metric, essentially looking at your stats every play versus every other team and every play. 31st out of 32nd, obviously not particularly good. people who are looking at recency bias, they'll look at last week. They'll say, oh, well, they shut down Devin Singletary. He averaged like 3.6 last week, I think it was, yards per carry. But he's had less than 4.0 yards per carry in 12 out of 19 games. So I'm not putting too much stock into that. But let's look at these guys here. Ryan Fournette, plus 120 anytime touchdown score. Rojo anywhere between plus 125 to 60. I love Fournette here in terms of just recent usage. The last few games in the playoffs, he's had 19 carries, 17 carries, and 12 carries. He's also, his targets are way up, 4, 6, and 7 in this playoffs. The targets have kind of switched as the season went on. Earlier in the season, we were seeing Rojo getting those. So, well, we got a defense that lacks in terms of rushing efficiency. We've got playoff Lenny looking fantastic. His usage is way up. He has scored in the last 3 games. And you look at the first matchup between these two teams, Rojo went off for 9 for 66 with a touchdown. So I think one of these guys for sure scores. I think there's a decent chance that maybe both score. Maybe you put one unit on Fournette at plus 120 and a half unit at Rojo plus 225 or whatever the line is now. I think, again, is worse there. Especially in the sense because you're still seeing Ronald Jones he got 13 carries, he got 10 carries in the last 2. So I can easily see him coming in for maybe a 6-yard touchdown run, first and goal. But long story short, yes, I think both of these running backs. I think the running backs are going to eat for the Bucs, and one of the reasons why I prefer the Bucs this week. I think there's more ways for the Bucs to win this game because of the defensive inefficiency of the Chiefs, where. I think the Bucs defense is going to sell out, or not sell out to stop the run. They're number 1 in terms of rushing DVOA. So it's going to force the Chiefs to beat them through the air. Can the Chiefs beat them through the air? For sure. But nonetheless, having that dynamic offense that I think the Bucs are going to be able to run, and they're going to be able to essentially play their game the way they want to play it, I think is going to be an advantage.
So since this is not your first rodeo or Super Bowl, whatever we want to call it, are there certain props every year that you look at, like you think are better than others, that you have a better shot on? Like when they come out, that let's say that Monday after Conference Championship Sunday, what's the first thing you look at? Are there certain props that you like better than others?
Not really, man. Honestly, I think props in general. I think most like totals in general are a little inflated because it is the Super Bowl, and again, just so many people are betting this game that more or less are casuals, and that I think is important in the sense that Vegas is going to have the sharpest lines ever, and the public hates betting unders. Who wants to watch this game and root for incompletions, right? Like nobody. Even if you don't have a dog in the fight, rooting for incompletions is only going to make you have a pretty miserable evening, even if the wings are good. I think that's going to be troubles. I look for any totals. Usually I look at like that high line as that's a strong line, go higher. I think I kind of switched my mentality a little bit coming into this week and saying, if it is super inflated, perhaps it's just because the public has bought it up or they knew that the public was still going to go over. So I look for those deltas between like season averages, similar defenses in terms of overall yardages. And I would take that space in between whatever the line is versus their averages generally as an overinflation rather than a sign of strength. If that makes sense. But, the line came out. I certainly didn't hone in on the props, as I pretty much haven't done all year, just looking at the overall line on the game at 3.5. Still love the Bucs.
So speaking of previous matchups, these teams actually did play this year. You had a 1 in 4 chance of it happening with the AFC playing only one division in the NFC, and it did hit this year, and they did play in Tampa. And in that game in November, I was going in that week in fantasy football. I was going against Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill in the first quarter against Tampa had something like 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. So basically, I lost my fantasy game just in that. Do you think Tyreek can repeat that here again, or are the Bucs going to try something different on him?
I mean, Tyreek is the fastest player in the NFL. He's explosive. Do I think he gets his? I for sure do. Do I think he goes off for 260 in the first half? Absolutely not. I think Todd Bowles and this Tampa Bay defense is playing interesting, and they, really sticking to man. They were able to shut down Devontae Adams. He's a little bit more of a physical receiver, but they did do that 2x this year. So, if anything, I think that looks like a bit of an outlier. I think what's interesting is we think about Tyreek here. He's minus 175 as an anytime touchdown scorer, as is Travis Kelce. And just in general, I don't really love the Chiefs touchdown props, right? Minus 175, that's just way too much juice for me. Especially in a game of this magnitude. Will they score? Probably. But, to bring this back to the Bucs for a second, obviously, because I'm hot on the Bucs, thinking about these touchdown scores, if you got Hill at 170, minus 175, Kelce minus 175, of course, meaning you have to bet 175 to win 100, a lot of juice there. Looking at the other side of the ball, we've got Mike Evans sitting at somewhere between plus 110 and plus 125. Evans is number 3 in terms of the red zone touchdowns in the league, tied with Travis Kelce. So we're seeing Travis Kelce at minus 175 and Evans at plus money. That, to me, is super, super interesting. This Mike Evans guy, perhaps we've heard of him. He's got a pretty solid target share in the red zone as well, 23% of targets in the red zone. Brady loves to give it to him, and he's scored in back-to-back games. And the Chiefs' passing defense is 16th overall in terms of overall DVOA. I think that's super interesting to me, getting plus odds on a guy that has scored in the red zone all year, who I thought should be priced a little bit more closely to Hill and Kelce. But back to your question at hand, do I think Hill goes off? Sure. I don't think this Chiefs offense is going to get the run game going at all, with them splitting carries between Clyde Hilaire, Edwards Hilaire, as well as Darrell Williams, both of which have looked, lackluster to say the least. So if this Chiefs team, I think, is going to have a chance to win this game, of course they do, they're going to need Kelce and Hill to really air it out.
I like the Evans prop as well. He's underrated. He still doesn't get as much the publicity as I think he does, even though he is, he gets a lot, but he deserves more. That is a good prop. I will probably get on that. So you and I are both high on the Bucs in this game, and that leads to a question I see we also have coming in on live, which is from Brian Hanslin, and that is, if Brady and the Bucs win, does he walk away from football?
I hope not. Tom looks better than he ever has. He's more mobile in the pocket. His arm looks great. He's got the most loaded offense against he's had since 2007 between wide receiver 1, Mike Evans, wide receiver 1, Chris Godwin, wide receiver 1, Antonio Brown, and then wide receiver 3, Scotty Miller. This offense is so loaded. Firing Cameron Brate, firing Rob Gronkowski, Rojo, Fournette, both starting running backs anywhere in the league. I think it would be silly for Tom to walk away at this point. Has the guy earned it? Absolutely. He could have walked away 5 years ago and people would still be talking about him in the GOAT conversation. But I think he's, at this point, it's like, if you're still playing, why walk away? He now lives in beautiful Tampa, no income tax, wife and kids seem happy. I sure hope he comes back for another year, kind of regardless if he wins or loses.
So I want to ask you one other NFL question, non-related to the Super Bowl, but before we go there, so the final verdict is we're both like the Bucs at plus 3.5, right? And you may touch the money line as well, it sounds like.
Yeah. Just fortunate version of what we're looking at here outside of the fade the public for the home dog in the Super Bowl with one of the greatest covering quarterbacks in the history of the league. In terms of overall DVOA for the defense, which I think is going to be a huge X factor here, you've got the Bucs at number 6. You've got the Chiefs at 24. That's a huge delta. In terms of overall team efficiency, we've got the Bucs at 2, the Chiefs at 6. I don't think people are realizing that. That's a weighted average. That's looking more closely at the second half of the year than the first half, but I think a better representation of how these teams have been playing. And in terms of overall offense here, overall efficiency, you've got the Bucs at 2, the Chiefs at 3. So in terms of overall Football Outsiders DVOA stats, the Bucs are winning in every category that I care about. In terms of yards per play, 6.4 on offense versus 6.0 for the Bucs on offense. Close enough that I'm not losing sleep over it, especially because you're seeing the direct inverse of that on defense, 5.6 and 5.1. Super, super close. When it's close, when it's almost equal, I look to the dogs. Looking at points per play, we actually see the Bucs winning in terms of both points per play, both on offense and on defense. Offense, the Bucs are scoring 4.479 points per play. The Chiefs are 0.450, so slight edge there to the Bucs. Defense, slight edge there as well to the Bucs, 0.347 versus 0.350. I think an interesting thing that people aren't really talking about, Tampa Bay strength of schedule, number 1 in the league per teamrankings.com. Kansas City Chiefs, number 9 in the league. So perhaps even with these great stats, the Chiefs' stats are lightly inflated. Hard to say because this offense is that explosive, and don't want to be a hater by any means. I think this Andy Reid led team is fantastic. But when literally every stat is essentially pointing to the Bucs, we're fading the public. Brady at home in the Super Bowl for the first time. I love it. I love the Bucs all day.
Well, we agree. We will see if we are right. I want to ask you another NFL question that just really I can't figure this out. This Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade over the weekend. Matt Stafford going out to the LA Rams, Jared Goff coming now to be the Detroit quarterback. How in the world in this trade do the Detroit Lions also get 2 first-round picks back?
That is a fantastic question, man. I think both teams kind of lucked out. I think the Rams are looking at a bit of a win now mentality. Stafford's got a couple years left. He's slinging the rock, something that Goff does against certain defenses and then, can't play against other ones. So I think it's a great rebuild for the Lions here, especially they're going to have a new coach coming in who looks like a bit of a madman with that interview that he ripped off.
Dan Campbell, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, wow, man, for sure, lay off the pre-workout perhaps before getting up to the podium. But he made a statement. He made his point that this team is, going to be tough like the Detroit City, and I appreciate that. But I mean, I love Stafford, man. He's an absolute gunslinger, and I think he'll be great with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and even Higbee out there with a. I mean, they're a functional organization. The first time he's really been able to play in one, so I'm really excited to see what he can do out in the LA Hollywood area.
Yeah, Detroit. I mean, for them to get a younger quarterback, and again, maybe the verdict's still out on Jared Goff. He had that one good year, but also to get 2 first-rounders back. Wow, I mean, that is a steal.
Well, and this brings me to a follow-up question. Does this raise the stock now for Deshaun Watson?
That's a very good question.
So now, because this happened, it's like, oh, now we got to give him our whole team.
Right. It probably did drive up the asking price for Deshaun Watson. If you're Houston, you probably like this deal a lot. Now now the market is set high. Where do you think? And Dougie Sticks brings up a good question. Where do you think Deshaun Watson ends up? Is it going to be on the Jets or the Dolphins as he's hoping?
Good question. As a Patriots fan, I hope not. I think, if anything, I hope he's on the Patriots next year. I don't need to see him twice a year for the next 5 years, But I don't think he'll go to the Jets, with the number 2 pick. They've got a pretty decent selection. They could take Fields. Maybe Fields sneaks up to number 1. You've got Urban Meyer down in Jacksonville, the Ohio State connection. I think that's interesting. But nonetheless, I think they stick to either the Darnold experiment, with a new coach, or draft a quarterback. I don't think it would make sense to give up that much to get Watson for them. Miami, on the other hand, also interesting. Obviously, just drafted Tua. They got Fitzpatrick down there slinging the rock as a good senior mentor. I mean, Deshaun Watson, of course, that's a generational talent, but 2 teams that are already kind of committed to the rebuild. I don't know if they pull that off that quickly. Are those the 2 teams that are the front runners to land him right now in terms of Vegas odds?
Yes, and it's also who he's asking to go to because he does have no trade. So he has asked specifically to go to the Jets or Dolphins. That doesn't mean he won't waive it for anyone else, but those are his 2 preferences. But you've won enough up in New England, man. Let someone else win for a change.
Yeah, and we're taking a year off this year. Hopefully we'll be back next year. So
I tell you, if you are, and I don't know if you've watched, but we've had some Buffalo Bills fans on the last couple of weeks. They are really set to kind of own this division now going forward for the short future in the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, the Bills are in great shape.
Yeah.
But
never thought I'd see the day.
Me either. Well, thanks for coming on, Geoff. We appreciate it. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you soon.
Before you go, one last thing. So, Geoff, if you were talking to future Geoff and you had a 30-second clip to say what you think is going to go down the Super Bowl, what are you telling future Geoff?
I'm telling future Geoff that you should stick to your guns and the Bucks here back in the GOAT. I think I'm telling future Geoff to also sprinkle a couple touchdown props on Cameron Brate at plus 260, maybe sprinkling Gronk at plus 220. I think one of those guys for sure scores. Current future Geoff, talking to last round Geoff, said great pick on Cameron Brate at plus 400. That was a hell of a bet to score a touchdown. But I think he's saying, drink some beers, have some wings, and enjoy the game is what future Geoff is telling current Geoff right now.
Well, we will see if future Geoff should take the advice. Well, thanks for joining us. As always, that is Old Man Who Bets, one of our favorite guests and most knowledgeable. Thanks for coming on.
There you go.
Thanks for having me, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Got it, Geoff. So that is Old Man Who Bets, and Super Bowl is now this week, which is crazy because we are going to have to now go into this non-football mode.
Yeah.
And I think actually he kind of brought it up. He didn't say it specifically, but I think losing football this year is going to sting even more because of the current state of affairs that we have going on. So on to other topics that we discuss on this program. And I was kind of hoping selfishly when Geoff was talking there that we could just keep Geoff on the whole time and I didn't have to go to the other topics, but we have to. And that is we're going to shift gears and talk to the NHL. So if you follow the NHL and you follow the show, you know exactly where we're going to lead. We do have somebody in the studio today watching the show, and I'm sure he knows where we're going. Studio audience. He's back again to this week. And one of the areas that I don't want to go to, we're going to go to, and that is the New York Rangers. And it's not really necessarily the on-ice stuff. And Dougie Sticks, being the hockey magician you are, I'm not sure if you're aware of what happened over the weekend.
Time out, slow down. So is this something negative that happened?
Yes, but off the ice.
Can I start then with something positive that happened before this?
Sure. Let's lead in with
our boy Alexis Lafreniere with the game-winning overtime goal, baby.
Look at this. You got it done. Yes, he did. Last Thursday in Buffalo, the Rangers finally got a win on that stretch of games I said was important with a overtime goal up in Buffalo. So after that game on Saturday night, the Rangers came home and they played the Pittsburgh Penguins. And when they played the Penguins on Saturday night, it kind of was a back and forth game. The game went to overtime, and the Rangers lost 4-3 in overtime. And of course, if you're a Ranger fan, the last person in the world you want to have a game-winning goal against you is Sidney Crosby, and that's what happened. So you go to bed as a Ranger fan Saturday night. You lost 4-3 in overtime. You're a little annoyed. You got a point. You probably should have played better. The Rangers were horrific in the third period in that game. So in some ways, you were lucky to get a point. You go to bed. The next day on Sunday, we're talking now 3 days ago because we're taping the show this week on Wednesday. Word comes out that the Rangers have waived Tony DeAngelo, the defenseman. Now, you may remember, Doug, because you are here every show, that over the offseason, the Rangers decided to sign Tony DeAngelo, re-sign him.
For like crazy amounts of money.
Yes, over $4 million a year, which I complained was too high. So here you have a situation where you re-signed a player to a decent amount of money, right? And 7 games into the season, you've given up on him. Really? So obviously, it doesn't take a detective to figure out that there has to be something else going on, right? Now, his play on the ice hasn't been good, but there's plenty of players on the Rangers we could call out, and we're not waiving players that aren't playing well. There has to be something else that's going on, right?
So, the info?
I've got it for you. So let's start with not the stick that broke the camel's back. Tony DeAngelo is a controversial character. He's extremely outspoken on Twitter with his political views, and everybody's entitled to their own political views. I just don't think the Rangers want it out there as much as it is. He's paid to play hockey. He's kind of been a controversial guy. There was an issue in the first game we talked about on the show last week where he got a penalty, and when he went to the penalty box, he slammed the penalty box door, and the referee decided, rightly so, to give him an additional 2-minute penalty. So that's going on. So what happened Saturday night? So the Rangers skate off the ice. They've lost 4-3. They're annoyed, right? And they're going in the tunnel that they have to the locker room. And when you walk in that tunnel, the Ranger locker room is down at the end on the left. And apparently, Mr. DeAngelo said something to the goalie of the Rangers that night, who was Alexander Georgiev, about letting up that last goal, and also a play that led to the goal where he kind of didn't give the puck to DeAngelo and swept the puck around the corners. Whatever was said was not good because the goalie, Alexander Georgiev, then punched Tony DeAngelo.
Wow.
Now, so, yeah, not good. So
that's not good at all.
No. So you've got a player now fighting his own goalie after the team loses. So before we get into this, I want to say something on a side, and it was kind of annoying. On Sunday, when this is all going on and the Rangers waive him, there's got to be at that time 10 or 15 reports about what happened. The Rangers did it because this. Now, we've learned now what the truth is, right? Mm-hmm. But there were some horrible things said in the media as to what it was. One of them was that the Ranger, Tony DeAngelo, does not like Keandre Miller, who is an African-American rookie that the Rangers have with their high on and has been great, and wouldn't give him the puck after he scored his first goal, which was completely untrue. So the media, whoever put these reports out, which are terrible, I mean, really deserves. I don't know.
The media, man. I don't want to get us canceled right now. No. The media's got to straighten out,
especially with some big news maybe coming on the program in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I heard today.
Yes,
when I came in here.
Yes.
Yes, the media screwed this up. So the truth of the matter is he said something to the goalie, and now Jeff Gordon, the Rangers general manager, has come out and rightfully so said, you know what, Tony DeAngelo will never play for the New York Rangers again. He has since then cleared waivers, which he cleared as of noon on Monday, and now the Rangers are looking to trade him. Now, if I'm another GM in the market, I'm not trying to touch this guy. He hasn't been really that good on the ice, and clearly the off-ice baggage comes with it, and you don't really want that. But it was reported last night on TSN in Canada, which is kind of like the ESPN in Canada, that there are a lot of teams surprisingly making phone calls to Jeff Gordon inquiring about getting Tony DeAngelo. So if the Rangers can move Tony DeAngelo, it beats the alternative. I mean, if you can even just get someone to pick up his salary.
So that was going to be my question. If we trade him, we're not paying his salary anymore? Well, sometimes it gets...
Yeah, you may have to pay some of the salary just to get rid of him. Like, you're going to have to probably take on a certain percent of the contract. I don't think they'd have to take it all on, but the return that you're going to get for him is not going to be something substantial. It's going to be maybe a mid to late round draft pick, right?
Especially when he's fighting the goalie.
Right, he's fighting his goalie. So if you're the Rangers from here, really the only option you have is to try and trade him. And whoever is inquiring about him, you know what? Let it go. And it's a terrible look on the organization because they just re-signed him like 10 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And somebody
we were talking about it.
Yeah, somebody didn't do their research. Now, there were these political issues with Tony DeAngelo in the offseason. This has not been going on. This is not something new that's going on, rather. So there has been this issue, but the Rangers look terrible here, and they just need to kind of find a way to close the book here, turn the chapter, whatever you want to call it, and move on and find a team to take him. And do not expect to get anything substantial back. This will be a perfect example of addition by subtraction. You're not going to get anything back. You're going to just add by getting rid of them and moving on from there. So the Rangers, in terms of on the ice, we talked about they lost on Saturday night to the Penguins. They played the Penguins again at home on Monday night, and the Rangers won 3-1. It was closer than that. As a matter of fact, Artemi Panarin had an empty net goal with less than a second left because it really was a 2-1 game. The Rangers have a lot of issues, and I hate to say this. Mika Zibanejad looks lost. I mean, this is a guy, when COVID shut down the NHL season in March, the second to last game the Rangers played, Mika Zibanejad had 5 goals in a game. Now, granted, you're not going to repeat that every game. Mika Zibanejad has 1 goal on the season. I mean, he just looks lost. Now, he was battling COVID about 3-4 weeks ago, so you do have to, I guess, think that maybe some of the lingering effects of it are still there, but he looks just lost. There are some other players. I mean, Chris Kreider has not been good. Ryan Strome is non-existent. Julian Gauthier, or whatever you want to pronounce his last name, this experiment is still not working. There's been a few players we talked about last week, Keandre Miller, Pavel Buchnevich, Adam Fox looks great. But other than that, the defense on this team looks horrendous. And now, depth-wise, Brendan Smith getting hurt the other night is only going to give more young people experience on defense, but the caveat to doing that is you have young people playing defense. They're going to give up opportunities. The goaltending has not been great. Shesterkin was good the other night. That was probably his most solid game to date. So the Rangers here, as they play Washington at home tomorrow night, their game on Saturday, we were talking here in the studio before, has been canceled because of a COVID outbreak with the Devils, which we'll get into in a minute. So the Rangers now have only two games over the next week. They've got to really start winning because they've got Boston coming in next week, and that is not going to be easy.
I think this is not a good situation to be in, but I think getting rid of addition by subtraction is definitely, at this point of the season, perfect timing to jumpstart the season. Answer me this. So, are we still splitting time with goalies? How's our roster changes? Are we starting to find our rhythm? Are we starting to put the right pieces in, or are we changing our roster every day?
The goaltending is going to be the sort of thing where Igor Shesterkin is going to play more games at the end of the day than Alexander Georgiev. It won't be a 50-50 split, but Alexander Georgiev is a really good backup, so he should play a fair amount of games. It's not going to be like an 80-20 like it was over the years with Lundqvist. Line changes is another issue. Alexis Lafreniere is back up on the first line. People are moving around like crazy, and I just don't understand it. It's very, very frustrating. There was an article in the New York Post last night. I'm not sure I agree with it, although I would love it to be right, that because of all the stuff going on that the Rangers have dealt with, the Rangers look like they are primed to go on a run now. I don't know what information Larry Brooks at the New York Post has to make that claim, but we would love him to be right. But if you're the New York Rangers, it's been just a really, really bad 3 weeks to start the season. And as we said last week, and it still holds true, if you are going to be something relevant this year, and again, we never expected the Rangers to compete for the Stanley Cup this year, but if you were going to have the opportunity to be relevant, you've got to start playing well in the next 2 weeks, because if not, you're going to have a lot of meaningless games at the second half of the season. So your last 27 of 56 games are going to be negative. One thing I want to touch on, and we said it a minute ago, and that is the New Jersey Devils and the COVID situation. So the Devils this past weekend went up and played a weekend series up in Buffalo, 2 afternoon games on Saturday and Sunday. And while they were up there on Saturday, a couple players got added to what the NHL calls a COVID list. Once you're on a COVID list, you don't play, and that could mean a couple different things. You tested positive for COVID, or you've also been around someone that's had COVID, or you've had a false positive. The NHL, understandably so, does not give out information beyond that. You're just on the COVID list, so you can try and guess what happened, why someone's on it. Since that time, the Devils now have 14 total players. 4 more were added last night to the COVID list. Wow. So the Devils were supposed to play last night in Pittsburgh. That did not happen. The Devils are supposed to play tomorrow night in Pittsburgh again. That's not happening. And they're supposed to play Saturday at home versus the Rangers. And as I mentioned, that's not happening. Now, they were up in Buffalo. It turns out Taylor Hall, who was on Buffalo, who was on the Devils last year, got added to the list on Sunday. So clearly what must have happened is between games, Saturday and Sunday, he must have been around somebody on the Devils who is on the COVID list, and therefore, by contact tracing, as we call it, is now on the COVID list as well. The Buffalo Sabres have now canceled all their games this week. They were supposed to play at the Islanders last night and again tomorrow night, and then up in Boston over the weekend. All of those games are canceled. If you are the NHL, and we talked about this with Dan Rosen 3 weeks ago, the NHL was prepared to have some COVID issues. I think as you come out of the bubble, which they're not in this year, it's inevitable. This is not good. It is already in 3 weeks shutting down a ton of games. And as Dan Rosen said on the program, the NHL had built in like 4 or 5 days between the end of the season and the start of the playoffs to make up games. You can't make up 10 or 15 games per team in 3 or 4 days. You can't play doubleheaders in hockey. You can do it in baseball. You can't do it in hockey.
True.
So the NHL has some issues here, and let's hope that this issue on the Devils is contained, whatever's going on, and they can return to the ice next week. And let's also hope that whatever is going on in Buffalo that made that team get into the same situation is rectified as well. And also that this does not spread to other teams, because this could become a very messy situation very, very, very fast.
Do you know what the rule is? Is there a certain amount of players to have COVID that cancels games? Or one person on the team has it? We're canceling.
That is a very good question. It does not look like there is, because right now the COVID list of the Sabres is not very long, but whatever they felt the exposure was on the Sabres warranted games being shut down with less physical names on the COVID list.
Well, I will say this: I went to school in Buffalo, and I know times have changed with COVID right now, so people aren't really going out. But after Sabres game, you're finding players out and about.
No, I'm
out and about. Sabres, the Bandits, you hanging out. You turn. Oh, hey, you want to do a shot with starting center from the Sabres, man?
There you go.
Yeah. So most likely they were all hanging out.
Yeah. So something's going on. It's not good. Let's hope the NHL and the individual organizations, in particular here, the Sabres and the Devils, can get a handle on it. So enjoy the Super Bowl this coming Sunday. We will see if Geoff Sheasby is right. Him and I are actually on the same boat of taking Tampa a plus 3.5. What do you like?
I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be 37-32.
And the winner is? Bucks. Okay.
I just want I like the storyline. I don't want story. Like the Chiefs could be better, but whatever. I'm going for the storyline ending. Like he comes to a new team, rips it up.
I like it.
Yeah.
Let me ask our studio audience, who do you like?
Taking the Bucks.
Another vote for the Bucks. Look at this.
I'm taking the Bucks 38.
He's got 38 for the Bucks.
38-30?
38-30. So both of the two of you like a lot of points in this game. Let's hope you're right.
Yeah, definitely want a shootout. Definitely want a lot of points. I like the story of Tom Brady and the Bucks. He goes to a new team, with a bunch of weapons and takes it. And like, it's fitting, like, sorry, Patrick, but your time will come. Like, let Tom's going to have his little last couple rodeos, and then, Patrick can handle it.
And one last mention, very important, our Super Bowl contest here that we're doing. Please make sure you get your entries in by Sunday.
Giving away free money.
We're giving away free money. You cannot lose. You can only break even and not get anything, but you can't lose. You're pretty dumb for not playing. You can send us at mypbshow@gmail.com. Email us who is going to win the game and what the score of the game is going to be. We will announce the winner of the $50 Amazon gift card on the show next week.
Free money.
And what you choose to buy on Amazon is entirely up to you. Take the gift card from us and run. Run as fast as you can. Run away from these cats. So thanks for tuning in. As always, you can also send any hockey questions or football questions you want to send our way. The same email, mypbshow at gmail.com. And thank you for the people who were watching, sending in questions during the show today. We fired them off to just Sheasby as we saw him. I will make sure next week I get to some of these Ranger questions that I didn't have time to get to today because the Rangers are an evolving circus. We don't even know what they'll be like next week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Stay warm wherever you are and enjoy Super Bowl 55 on Sunday.